what we've achieved in those 5 years. Today is about connecting, about inspiring, about together strategizing. It's also about together shaping the future of OGP. But somehow, optimism is more difficult to muster today than it was a year ago, even for an optimist like me. But I'm going to try. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going is a very crappy but catchy song from the 90s, from my youth. Billy Ocean, you remember him. But it says exactly how it is. Civil society being strategic and persistent is important in normal times. It's essential in challenging times. Dialogue to build trust and understanding is important in normal times. It's crucial in polarized times. This is a time for us not to sit down and sulk. It's a time for us to step up and be better and bolder and braver than we've ever been before. Let me start with a thank you, though. A thank you for your leadership and your commitment over the last couple of years in making OGP what it is. Without your support and commitment, we would not be sitting here today to celebrate 5 years of OGP. We would sit here, thank you, Ilan. We would sit here. We would be looking back at another great idea that didn't live up to its full potential. But because of your commitment, we're here to celebrate 5 years of OGP. Together we've shaped national and global agendas around the open government agenda. We've pushed for 2,700 commitments, including long fought for reforms like beneficial ownership disclosure in Norway and the UK, or lobbying laws in Chile and Ireland. And as a partnership, we can also be extremely proud of ourselves that this year we explicitly have stood up for our values and principles by making one of our countries inactive because it was closing the space for civil society to operate. Another one was made inactive because it didn't live up at all to the commitment it made to OGP to implement reforms. And just yesterday, we heard that a third one is leaving the partnership, and we can be proud of ourselves for these achievements as well. OGP has helped deliver access to information laws in Kenya and in Tanzania. At the same time, it has failed to do so in Ghana and the Philippines. What does that tell us? It tells us that pushing for change is extremely difficult. It will only work if a lot of things come together, if there's real political will, if there's expertise, and if there's a coalition to push for change. OGP in itself cannot do it. Many of those things have to come together. Let me give you 2 examples of the brochure on early OGP initiatives that's being launched today, and you can find it out there. One is a Costa Rica example. It shows that if a promise for participation is more than political rhetoric, but is combined with giving the government machinery the power to act, real dialogue between government and civil society can happen. Public services can improve. And a mechanism for dialogue can be put in place even after being stalled for 23 years. Another example, Open Coesione in Italy, shows that if top-down open data initiatives are combined with bottom-up monitoring of the data, you can promote accountability and civic engagement. Both examples show to me that to make things work is extremely complex. It's an iterative process that goes 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But it also shows that in both examples, and in many more we have in the 70 countries in OGP, that dialogue is at the heart of change. Without dialogue, without trying to understand and to listen, change will not come. So that's where we have to start as a community. We have to build those dialogues, those conversations as a basis for the change we're pushing for. There are many more examples, but at the same time, I stand here ready to acknowledge that OGP has not delivered everything I hoped for when I joined. And I'm sure I know that many of you feel the same. That doesn't mean we have to sort of sit down and sulk. It means we have to step up our game. There are two things I want to share with you this morning. One, I want to share with you the observations coming out of the community conversations we held with about 500 of you the last couple of months, and discuss the way forward on them. Second, I want us to start thinking about how collectively we're going to shape the future. Like I said, the community conversations were conversations that were led by the Civil Society Steering Committee members, and we'll introduce you to them a bit later in the morning. Over the course of a couple of months, we talked to about 500 of you across the world to understand and to listen what OGP has been doing for you to date, but also to hear what your wishes, what your desires are for the next 5 years of OGP. And this is what we've heard. I'm going to give you 5 of the challenges, 5 of the key areas you feel passionate about. First, the space for civil society to operate is being challenged in many countries across the world, including many OGP countries. OGP tries to tip the balance in favor of openness. But what we see is that spaces are closing faster than we manage to open them. The second one is, in general, we see a shallow ownership of the open government agenda across government and civil society. We're bringing in more people, we're breaking down silos, but still, if you look at it, we're more of a trendy niche than a mainstream market. Third, we see an overall low level of ambition and implementation of commitments. As the examples tell you that I showed you, we've delivered some big results. We accelerated many small ones. But in general, this is still not, in a big scale, changing the culture of government or changing the lives of citizens. The fourth one is about OGP itself. One of the challenges you see is the rules of the game of OGP. You feel that our rules are not strong enough and not implemented enough. If you translate that, what does it mean? It means that countries get in that shouldn't get in. Countries stay in that undermine the principles of OGP. Countries get away with not doing right on the process of OGP or not delivering their commitments. The fifth and the final one, and a crucial one for this room, is you are sincerely worried about your own ability to be part of this movement, to play this game. The lack of resources for civil society, not just in the global south, but also in the global north, is a very key concern. So those are the 5 we've heard from you in all those conversations over the last months. And today we'll make a start in giving you answers of how we're going to take it forward, collectively. The fireside chat with Manish and Sanjay will touch on many of those. We have to challenge all 5, but I want to focus on 2 that I think are related. The first one is, the first challenge we have to move on is we have to move from participating elites to participating masses. We have to broaden the base of this movement. The second is we have to get better in pushing for ambitious commitments that make a direct difference in the lives of citizens. If we manage collectively to address these 2 challenges, we will also manage to make OGP live up to its full potential and make a start and a contribution to pushing back on declining trust, to pushing back on polarization, and to push back on populism. Citizens feel increasingly disenchanted and disconnected from government and policy-making processes. At the same time, we have to be frank and acknowledge that most governments also don't trust their citizens. So what do we do about it? And it goes back to the idea of dialogue. We need to bring back people to the heart of government, because the only way we can do it is if through dialogue and participation we find an answer to populism and polarization. But it leads me to 2 questions. One is, do citizens want to be at the heart of government? Do they want to be at the heart of policy making? And second, if they do, is it worth their effort? Will it make a difference in their lives? What is the promise that OGP holds for citizens? Now, to be honest, many of the commitments made today will not make the heart rate of ordinary citizens go up. And opening up a seat for them at the table as a mere gesture is just not good enough. In many countries, OGP has been able to create space for dialogue, for agenda setting, for pushing through reforms. But we have to be honest, that has been mostly advantageous for some civil society organizations in the capitals of OGP countries, being close to the open government agenda. We've been able to create more space for the participating elite, but not so much truly open up government. That's a good start, but it's not good enough. And to be crystal clear, I don't think our collective ambition should be to make the OGP process perfect, to make it the best possible niche product called OGP. Our ambition, our collective ambition, should be to make government open and inclusive and participatory, and make it deliver on the things that citizens really care about. Not just for the mere principle of inclusiveness, but because it's the only way to create enough civic muscle to push back on the challenges that we face today, to push back on the vested interests that don't agree with our agenda. So let me give you a small, quick example of what that looks like. In the Philippines, the government opened up spending data on 5 major expenditure lines, including roads and including schools. That means you could go in and see and textbooks end up in classrooms. And what citizens and civil society did was they initiated citizen audits. That was so interesting and so successful that the official audit institute of the Philippines saw it, liked it, and introduced it in the formal audit and accountability system, making local governments respond. That's a way of how you can bring citizens into government. But we don't have many examples of those. We need much, much more examples and much more reforms like this. I've laid out a few key challenges. To summarize, we need more actors in this game. We need to work together much stronger, much more collectively in coalitions. And we need to push for commitments and reforms that make a change and a difference in people's lives. And this is where you come in, because you've heard it before, OGP is as strong and as weak as we collectively decide to make it. So I want us, the coming years, to work on 2 things. I want us to work collectively in making OGP better, to bring in more agents, to be smart civil society, to build coalitions, vertical and horizontally. But more importantly, I want us to work together to make the agenda of open government one that resonates with the interests of civil society, and to make what OGP is about, participatory, inclusive government, not something that's a niche product, but something that's a mainstream market. Let me tell you why I think that's so important. If you want to put a reform on the agenda, if you want to pass a law, you need 10 people in a room. If you want that same reform then credibly implemented, you need 1,000. But if you want inclusive participatory government, if you want government responsiveness, then you need a movement of millions to move this forward. And that's the challenge we have. The great French writer Camus already said back in 1949 that we've seemed to replace government into a style of dialogue by communiques. And I think that still holds very valid today. I think for many citizens that's how government feels, distant, impersonal. But that's not how it should be. More than ever before in my 5 years at OGP, I think that dialogue is the only way to move forward. It's the start of the solution. It's not the solution, but it's the start of the solution. Let me give you one more example before closing. In the Dutch National Action Plan, there's a commitment about an informal approach to citizens' requests to government. It's called And it sounds better in Dutch, believe me. It's called the Project for Pleasant Contact with Government. It really sounds better. And as an OGP commitment, they decided to include FOI requests in this. Now that sounds very simple, but what they did basically is, if you submitted a request for information, a civil servant would actually call you and talk to you and discuss the request. And what happened is, there were a lot of upsides for the government. It led to less appeals and complaints, to quicker lead times in sort of answering the requests. It was cheaper, so government happy. But more importantly and more interestingly, what they found is that even if they could not answer the request, trust in government still went up. Satisfaction in government still went up. The pure fact that someone picked up the phone and talked to you, that government became human, had its effect. That's how simple it can be. And that brings me to the close and to the challenge we have. Participation and dialogue should all be about citizens talking to citizens. It should be about co-creating solutions. And in the times we live in, this will not be easy. It will be very difficult, because the perspectives on what the right solution is will be very different if you ask different people. But it's the only way. Conversation will be uncomfortable at first, I'm sure, and it should be. But it's the only way to together find solutions on the way forward in the times we are facing. It's the only way to build mutual trust and counter polarization. The years to come might not be more fun. They might not be more easy. I'm sure they won't be. But we have no choice. As a community, as OGP, we have no choice but to step up our game and to be better and bolder and braver than ever before. And my call on you today as civil society leaders in this room is, join us, step up the game, and make this work. Thank you.